Ban list time. That's right, YGO Strats here, and it is ban list season. This next ban list season is set to be a pretty impactful one, or at least it could be. The list is set to drop no sooner than January 17th, 2022, which is right after YCS Pasadena permitted that whole global pandemic thing doesn't get in the way and the event actually goes through. But it's also right before YCS Utrecht, which is why my prediction for when we'll get the list is I believe that while we may receive the updates on the 17th, I don't believe they'll come into the effect until about the 23rd or so, to allow European players to attend the event under a ban list they've practiced for. Or at least for their sake, I certainly hope that's the case. But let's just jump into it, starting with the Unlimits. Performer Pal, Skullcrobat Joker, Danger Nessie, and Emergency Teleport are all semi-limited as of the July 2021 ban list, and I predict all will be going to 3 come January. Pendulum has not performed exceptionally well at events, and Nessie has lived up to its myth status as nobody has seen it since it went to 2. And I think most people will agree that those cards going to 3 won't really ruin anyone's day. Emergency Teleport may be something of a brave unlimit, but I remember 2015 when the TCG released a new TCG exclusive archetype with psychic monsters, and they gave us E-Telly to 3 to abuse them with. Now granted, I'm making a pretty large assumption when saying this, but so far the TCG exclusive Libromancer has had a level 3 psychic monster revealed whose effect will trigger when summoned off E-Telly. So while it would indirectly boost a meta contender like, say, Phantom Knight or buff VW, I wouldn't be shocked to see it go to 3 as a means of buffing the liberal agenda, as a means of buffing the Libromancer deck. Or maybe Geek Boy is the only psychic in the archetype and I'm just an idiot, but we'll find out. For these semi-limits, I don't really think there's any card that needs to go here in terms of current competitive decks. I could maybe see Konami hitting some Tenyis like Ashuna or Vishuda as a means to hit Sword Soul without actually hitting Sword Soul. We all know they don't touch the new toys, so like, come on. At most, I could see them semi-limiting Sword Soul Emergence if we're going to be like hyper serious. I don't really see that, but I could. They hit Brio to 2 at one point in Necros format, so it's possible. They could also semi-limit Magical Meltdown if they want to finally hit the Invoked engine after like 5 years. We'll see if that actually happens. More than likely, I see them putting either nothing to 2, or maybe taking a monster off the limited list like Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, Infernity Archfiend, Cyrestein, or Morphing Jar would be one that I would guess. Really, I think you could put all 4 of those to 3 without it being an issue, but Destiny Hero Malicious does get lonely, so maybe putting those cards to 2 first will give them the company. For limits, or more aptly for the hits that actually matter, again I'm hit with 2015 flashbacks. Megatins drop, you can play all the new good archetypes for cheaper than ever, and then for whatever reason, Ulti Konohawk dies for 5 years. And I want that again completely. Limit Ulti Konohawk again. Put it to 1. It's completely undeserved, but it's completely hilarious, so more than worth it in that case. But actually, I won't be surprised if we see Nadir Servant and Tri-Brigade Fractal both go to 1. Konami is aware of how good Tri-Brigade is, and Dogmatica has been relevant ever since Nadir came out in the form of the Dogmatica Invoked decks. So if they don't hit the Invoked engine, this would be a huge hit to the Dogmatica engine and by virtue that deck. I also believe we may finally see Mystic Mine getting hit. This chart here, taken from Reddit, shows how many decks were playing Mine in the latest European Remote Duel YCS, with about 18% of decks playing it. The card is a game ender in some cases, and it's extremely difficult to out if not negated, and with it seeing more and more play in premier events, I wouldn't be shocked to see Konami finally decide to act on it. In terms of other things that should happen, or that I hope happen, if they aren't semied, I believe some of the Tenyi cards will likely end up here, most likely Ashuna, and I'm particularly fond of what Farfa recommended, or said, or however you want to refer to it, by limiting Lyrilusc Recital Starling. Personally, I would also like to see Zeus limited, because putting Zeus on top of another Zeus terrifies me and shakes the core of my soul. I know Zodiac has fallen out of the meta and they were the worst for that, but I still think the card should go to 1 to prevent that problem before it becomes a problem again. I don't know, preventative maintenance is usually a good thing. And most importantly, on to the bans. Imperial Order, Verte Anaconda, and Artifact Scythe. For Verte, I'm a little bit unsure, since the new Albaz deck that'll be coming out uses it, and they may want to keep Verte around to help push that deck in the future. But the DPE engine kind of speaks for itself, with it being damn near everywhere. And seeing as how we're getting an ultimate rare reprint of Fusion Destiny in the OTS pack, I don't think we're going to see an OCG type decision to ban that card, and DPE itself is selling Bode way too well for it to go, which just leaves Verte. I won't be shocked if Verte gets the LP treatment and dodges this list, but I think if Konami does decide to hit the DPE engine, it'll be Verte that goes. There's also, I guess, worth mentioning that Dragoon just got a Starlight rare reprint, so they probably don't want to ban that card right away if you're one of the 8 people that still thinks that card is seeing play in a competitive sense. So yeah. As for Imperial Order and Scythe, fuck them. IO should never have come back, and if you go back to that chart I showed earlier, over 40% of decks at the latest Remote Duel YCS were playing it. It's almost like shutting off a third of the cards in the game is really good. Who knew? The life point cost is almost entirely meaningless because sure, it's 700 life points every turn, but when you lose less than 10% of your life points, and depending on how many spells your opponent opened with, they can lose like 20 to 60% of their hand, it really doesn't matter. Not to mention we all know that when your opponent has IO is when you top deck spells for the next 3 turns, because that's just the way the game works apparently. As for Scythe, truthfully it saw very little play at this event, but if Konami doesn't want to hit the DPE engine in some way, it should probably go. And I mean broadly, I think the card should just go anyways. It just stops you from playing the game and just isn't really all that fun of a card. There's not much else to say, except that I've seen people set it with Dagda, make Halka Fibrax, then use Halk's effect on the opponent's turn to tag into TG Wonder Magician, use her effect to pop the Scythe, Scythe lock the opponent out of the game, and then quick sync into Baron using Wonder Magician and Scythe for an extra Omni Negate on top of not being able to play. That shit is just war crimes, dude. I don't know. Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are sick people, man. That ain't right. Can't just do a man like that. So yeah, in summary, for the Unlimited, I'm guessing Skull Crobat Joker, Danger Nessie, and Emergency Teleport. For Semilimits, I'm guessing most likely Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, and maybe something like Cyberstein. For the Limits, Nadir Servant and Tri-Brigade Fractal for sure, with most likely Tenyi, Ashuna, and Mystic Mine, and then God willing Zeus. And for bans, Imperial Order, Verte, Anaconda, and Artifact Scythe. And that's about it, so feel free to comment what you think will get hit, what should get hit, all that jazz. I love hearing ban list takes. It's some of my favorite stuff in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! I love hearing what people think about this game and all the different takes that I agree with and just cannot even remotely comprehend agreeing with, and everything in between. So yeah, go ahead, leave a comment, and you know what? Why not? Like and subscribe too. That'd be a real duelist move. And I'll see you next time on YGO Strats.